What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? BizzyDad here. You there, checking out the latest deck build video. But first, as usual, a big hello to my newest subscribers this past week. Here they are at the bottom. Thank you guys so much. Always enjoy getting new subscribers. Always appreciate new people jumping on board, checking out the videos, and of course, my longtime subscribers and my current subscribers for always checking out the videos. Likes in the comments, everything is great. So thank you for that. And let's get into it. This is the profile for the deck I call No Hands Land. This is a black and white built deck for our ruler Pandora, Girl of the Box. And before we get into this deck was inspired by a longtime subscriber of mine, Patrick Collins. This deck is for you because we were having a discussion one time on some cool combos and winning conditions. This came up, and I thought he was really onto something, but I wanted to put my little twist on it and maybe get to that winning condition a little bit smoother. So, Patrick, this is for you. Also, if you're not a subscriber, Patrick is part of a podcast called Stone of Void, who puts up Force of Will podcast, and they are really good. So definitely check them out. And if this deck is a winner, then I fully expect a 1 hour special on Stone of Void talking about how great I am. Thank you. So that is a joke, of course, but let's get into it. Our ruler is Pandora, Girl of the Box, and you can see she's a void ruler. She doesn't have a color assigned to her. This is from the Crimson Moon Fairy Tale. So this is a Grim Cluster card. This is a Wanderer format deck. So we're going to see Grim Cluster cards in here. Pandora is a human ruler with no color assigned to her. And that's because there are two separate Pandora cards, one with a J ruler side on light and one with a J ruler side on dark. And you are not required to tell your opponent which one you are playing. So that'll be a little bit of a mystery until you flip her over. Her judgment is 5. 1 light, 1 dark, and 3 of other. She does not have any other front-facing abilities. So let's pay the judgment, flip her over, so the truth will finally be revealed, and we are going to the dark side. This is Pandora of Dark, a human J ruler, 400 attack, 800 defense. The enter ability is what we're going for here. Your opponent discards all cards from his or her hand. That is powerful and that is brutal, because if you know me and you know my channels, one of the things that I say all the time, discard is death. And here is a enter ability. By flipping Pandora over, your opponent will discard every card they have. You will basically strip them down to nothing. They will have no hand. They are going to be in no hands land. And we built this deck to keep it that way. It's a 2-pronged attack. This deck is built to control our opponent's board, so there are little to no resonators on the board. And then, of course, when you flip Pandora over, they have no hand. And the goal is to flip her over to where they have no resonators, no cards, and ultimately no hope. We have cards to help us keep them in that position to where we can just pick them off at our will. So it really is a interesting combo, and when it works, it is really strong. And you'll see that in our support cards. But first, we will get into our stone base as usual. Like I said, this is black-white. So we have 4 copies of Magic Stone of Heaven's Rift. It is a dual stone that's going to give us access to both light and dark. And then, because it is Pandora of Dark, and our support cards are basically all dark, we have no light cards in this deck, but our opponent doesn't have to know that. So we just run 6 other basic dark Magic Stones, and it's going to get the job done. Being that the cards are all dark and all 10 of our stones give us dark, we should always be able to make a play as long as we have cards to cover the stone cost. So let's go into Resonators, and first off the bat is 4 copies of The Monkey Trapped in Life, a 1-drop Fairy Tale Resonator, 100 attack and defense. And when this card is put into a graveyard from your field, return it to its owner's hand. You lose 100 life. And when I first saw this card, I wasn't too big on it. This is a throwback to the old Rasputin a card from the original Vingolf set, which was basically along the same lines. When it hit the graveyard, you had the choice to pay 200 life, and if you did, she would come back to your hand. This is different. This is a forced loss of life and a forced take back. So every time the monkey trapped comes into the graveyard, you lose 100 life and it comes right back into your hand. The monkey's trapped. He can't die. So every time he hits the graveyard, you lose life and it comes back to your hand. You do have to pay attention to this later on in the game, especially if it's going up against a red deck or somebody who's got you against the ropes. Be really careful with the monkey because every time he hits the graveyard, you're going to lose life. And he only has 100 defense, so he's going to be hitting the grave rather easily, but that's okay. We have ways to work around this and make the monkey work for us. 4 copies of the Executioner, a 1-drop, 300 attack, 300 defense, zombie resonator with stealth. So we are going to use this for standby purposes. Even though he's 1 to play by himself, we are going to pay 2 to put the Executioner face down in our chant standby area, and we wait for the trigger to hit. So the trigger is you control a darkness magic stone, which we have 10, and a resonator was put into your opponent's field this turn. That is the trigger. So we put our Executioner down, as long as we have a darkness magic stone, which we will, and we wait for our opponent to put a resonator into their field. That is the trigger. Once that happens, the Executioner can flip over. And when this card enters the field from your chant standby area, destroy target resonator with total cost 3 or less. So that is really good. Executioner pops up on our opponent's turn, so he hits our field, and then we get to destroy one of their resonators with total cost 3 or less. It doesn't have to be the resonator they just put in. Target resonator 3 or less, we get to destroy. It should go without saying, make sure they have a resonator that is costing 3 or less, because if not, you're going to have to destroy one of your own, possibly the Executioner. He has to destroy somebody when he comes out. So, naturally just pay attention to that. But a really good control card for us, and you can see that the rest of these cards are going to help us make sure that our opponent's board stays as thin as possible. 4 copies of Mozart, which is a great resonator, a 2-drop composer, 1 dark and 1 of other to play, 200 attack and defense. When this card is put into a graveyard from your field, your opponent banishes a resonator. So you're starting to see the theme right here. We want to destroy our opponent's resonators. We want our opponent to be banishing their own resonators. We're going to keep our opponent's board thin as possible. Mozart is great. As soon as she hits the graveyard, your opponent has to get rid of a resonator. That's really good, simply put. 3 copies of Demonic Commander. This is a 3-drop demon resonator, 2 dark and 1 other to play, 600 attack and defense with flying, which is good. But whenever this card deals damage to your opponent, they discard a card. So that is a really good bonus, a good perk. And we're also going to use that to our advantage later on in the game, as you'll see the way the strategy unfolds. So a 6/6 flyer, which is great. When he gets damage to our opponent, they're going to discard a card. And what we're looking to do is basically, since our opponent is always going to be banishing, or we're going to be destroying their resonators, if the commander could get their damage through flying and then our opponent discards a card, that is good too. 3 copies of Nostradamus, a 3-drop Prophet resonator, 1 dark, 2 of other to play, 400 attack and defense. When this card enters your field, search your main deck for a card. Then shuffle the rest of your main deck and put that card on top of it. Excuse me. This ability is amazing, and it totally makes up for the fact that her stats are so weak. When Nostradamus comes in, you get to search your deck for any card. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't have to be a resonator or a certain color or a certain type. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want. Then shuffle your deck and put it on top. You don't even have to reveal the card to your opponent. That is amazing, to be able to literally stack the deck to get the card you want on top next. Nostradamus definitely serves her purpose. Really good card. I don't see many people use her in the Wanderer format. Excuse me, but she is really good because she helps us set up our win condition or get us out of trouble if necessary. And now the big gun. The big hammer being swung in this deck is Mephistopheles. We have 3 copies. Mephistopheles, the Abysmal Tyrant. 4 drops, 2 dark and 2 other to play. 1500 attack demon resonator with flying and target attack. This is our big boy. It's our big hitter with some really interesting abilities. You have to pay attention. When this card becomes targeted by spells or abilities your opponent controls, he or she loses 500 life. So if our opponent tries to come after Mephistopheles with a stoning to death or any spell or ability, anything that's going to target Mephistopheles, whether it gets through or not, they lose 500 life, which is great. Also, at the end of your turn, banish another Resonator. So as long as you have Mephistopheles on the field, every time your turn ends, you have to banish a Resonator. And this includes the turn Mephistopheles comes out onto the field, even though there's no swiftness, excuse me, even though there's no swiftness and no way for Mephistopheles to attack, his ability is still going to trigger at the end of your turn. And you're going to have to banish one of your Resonators. Another one of your Resonators. If Mephistopheles is alone, you don't have to banish anybody else. He won't banish himself. Keep in mind, if you have two Mephistopheles on the field, that is not smart, because at the end of your turn, you have to banish. They say banish another Resonator, and they're going to have to banish each other because of that ability. You do not want two Mephistopheles on the board alone, because at the end of your turn, you're going to have to banish both. However, this is a great opportunity to utilize the monkey trapped in life, because your turn ends, you banish the monkey, you lose 100 life, it comes right back into your hand, and on your next turn, you could play him again. You could constantly use the monkey as that banish fodder to keep big Resonators on the board. As long as you have the life to spare, this is a really safe play, and you could play the monkey every time and just banish him at the end of the turn. If not, you can always banish a Mozart, which is great. You banish Mozart. Mozart hits the grave, and now your opponent has to banish a Resonator of their own. So it's really strong. Not only that, Mephistopheles flies for 1,500 and also has target attack. Part of our winning condition, which we will get through once I go through the rest of the deck. So let's go into our own spells and abilities. We have 4 copies of the Black Treasure Box. This is a 1-drop edition from the Frozen Casket set. So these new editions don't get put anywhere right away. They just go right into the field. So it's 1 dark to play, and it goes into your field. At the beginning of your turn, destroy this card and bestowed Resonator. So you have to bestow this. You basically have to add it to a Resonator in order for the effect to take place. So it's on your field. It costs 1 to play, 1 dark. To bestow it, you have to pay 1 dark and rest it, and then you can add it to a Resonator. Obviously, we're looking to add this to one of our opponent's Resonators. And then that's it. So this is on our field. We pay 1, we rest it, we attach it to one of our opponent's Resonators, and at the beginning of our next turn, their Resonator gets destroyed, and so does the Black Treasure Box. It really puts our opponent's Resonators on a clock, and they know they have 1 turn to do something with that Resonator, or it's going to be destroyed. 4 copies of Resonance of Madness is a 1-drop chant, so you can only do this on your turn. As an additional cost to play this card, you must banish a Resonator. So it's not just the 1 dark to play this. You have to play this for 1, and then you have to banish one of your Resonators. If you don't have a Resonator on the board, you can't play this card. But you play this for 1 and banish one of your Resonators, and you get to destroy target Resonators. So again, we have cards that will definitely do the trick. We can pay the 1 and banish the monkey. Monkey comes back to our hand. We do lose life, but we get to destroy one of our opponent's Resonators. This is a really big double whammy right here. Play the Resonance of Madness, banish our Mozart, and we get to destroy one of our opponent's Resonators, and then they have to banish a Resonator. So good way to get 2 of our opponent's Resonators off the board. So really good card, and again, fits our theme perfectly, very effective. The staple for any dark deck in the Wanderer format is Stoning to Death, a 2-drop spell chant instant. You could do this at any time, and it's simple. Destroy target Resonator. It's simple as it gets. For 2 dark, at any time, you throw this out there, boom, target Resonator is destroyed. Like I said, it is a staple. You don't run into dark decks in the Wanderer format and not see this card either in the main or the sideboard. It's just how it is. It's the Thunder of Dark right there. We have 4 copies of Death Sentence from the Queen. I really do like this card. This is a spell chant standby, so we pay 2 and we put it in our standby area face down and wait for the trigger. And the trigger is while a resonator your opponent controls is attacking. Well, simple as that. Okay, so that's our trigger. So we wait. We put the death sentence from the queen card in our standby area face down. We wait for our opponent to attack us with one of his or her resonators. Hello, ladies. Just attack in general, not just attack us. Make sure they have 2 resonators on the board because the trigger is going to benefit us. So they attack. We flip this over. And your opponent banishes a non-attacking resonator that he or she controls. You gain life equal to its defense. So it's a really cool play and a good strategy play. If our opponent has 2 resonators on the board, and let's say one has a 400-400 and the other one is 800-800, well, let's suppose we have our standby card down, a death sentence is in our standby card, and our opponent tries to attack with the 400-400. Well, we'll flip this over, and now our opponent has to banish a non-attacking resonator. The only non-attacker is the 800-800, so they have to banish that resonator. We're going to gain 800 life, which is sweet. Now we still have to deal with the attack. We can either take it and take the 400 damage, block it with one of our resonators, or we can hit a stoning to death if we have it and kill the attacking resonator. Just wipe both resonators off our opponent's board. No attack gets through, and we gain the life. So that is really cool. This is a really good card. Something, again, a card I don't really see played much, and opponents do not see that coming. Once they do, though, once they get hit with that and they see that you put another card in your chant standby area, they're going to have a pretty good idea of what it is and will be thinking twice about their attack. So good way to get in their heads. Finally, in the main deck is 3 copies of Recollection of Dystopia. This is a spell chant, so we can only do it on our turn. 2 dark to play. Your opponent banishes a resonator. Simple as that. There's more text for Dark Alice, but we don't run her, so don't worry about that. But again, just a really simple banish. This gets around protections and additions that our opponents might be putting on their resonator so they can't be targeted. If that's the only one on the field and we hit them with this, they have to banish it. There's no target. It's a choice. So that works really good in that. And only 3 copies. We have a lot of other cards that can help us out with that. So that is the main deck. And really, this is what we're going for. So here's the whole main idea behind the deck. We're going to be using our cards like the Executioner and Mozart and the Black Treasure Box and Stoning to Death, Death Sentence from the Queen, Resonance of Madness, Recollection of Dystopia. We're going to be using these cards throughout the game to make sure our opponent's board has little to no resonators on it. These are our control cards. And we have cards like the Monkey and the Mozart, the Executioner. All these cards do the job of keeping our opponent's boards light and making sure that there are no resonators on the deck. As we're building our stone count, we want Mephistopheles. We want him in our hand. So whether we can draw to him ourselves or we use Nostradamus to put Mephistopheles on top, this is going to be the big hammer. This is going to be our game winner. We want to get Mephistopheles in our hand. And once we have that set up, once we have our Mephistopheles, and we want to get our opponent's board down to 0 resonators, that is the goal, 0 resonators. That's when we want to flip Pandora over. We want to J-activate, flip Pandora over, and now when she enters, our opponent has to discard all cards. And that is what I mean by no hands land. Our opponent will have no cards. They got to discard them all. So no hand and no resonators on the board because we've kept it clean. And so now your opponent is sitting there with absolutely nothing and is only going to be able to top deck, just draw that top card and do whatever he or she possibly can. But here's our kick. If we have that demonic commander on the board and Mephistopheles, this is our dream scenario. Let's say, actually, this is our dream scenario to have after J-activating. Having Mephistopheles, the demonic commander, and the monkey trapped in life. This is really the best case scenario for us because our opponent is top decking. They have no resonators and they have no cards in their hand. So the only thing they could do is take that top card and hopefully it's something that they could play. If it's a resonator, they play it. It most likely will not have swiftness. They'll have to pass the turn to us. Mephistopheles has target attack. So Mephistopheles could just swing for 1,500 target attack at our opponent's resonator. More than likely, that's going to kill the resonator and, again, leave him with nothing. If it's something they don't want to play, well, we'll swing with our demonic commander. Damage gets through to our opponent. They have to discard the card, and then that's it. We keep them with no resonators, keep them with no cards in their hand. Since we have Mephistopheles at the end of our turn, we'll banish the monkey, lose 100 life, and it'll come back to us again on the next turn to banish. It's a cycle that our opponent will not be able to break through unless they have the perfect cards to do it. So more likely than not, they have no cards, they have no resonators, and Mephistopheles, demonic commander, anyone else we get on the board is just going to be swinging away. The monkey will keep cycling back in and out to make sure nobody else goes, and that is it. Would most likely be game over. There's hardly any way for our opponent to recover. So let's get into the sideboard, which of course always situational. See what your opponent is playing and adapt accordingly. So first off, 3 copies of the Death Scythe. We want to keep an eye on our opponents who have strong J rulers, and that's what the sideboard is for. So Death Scythe is great. It is Regalia, cost 0. Your opponent's J ruler loses and cannot gain Imperishable and Swiftness. That is really good. You go up against the Sylvia, you go up against anybody with Swiftness, or anybody who's playing a Levitine, and this will stop them dead in their tracks. Actually, Levitine is banned in Wanderer, so in this format, you should never see the Levitine. But our J rulers with Swiftness, we don't want that. And we don't want Imperishable either, just in case we have the chance to take them out. So, pretty simply put. Oh, also, let me go back to that. You can rest the Death Scythe, and your J ruler will gain +2/+2 until end of turn. You can also remove 3 cards in your graveyard from the game and put this card in from the graveyard into your hand. So a good way to scoop it out of the grave. If you definitely need it, you just have to remove 3 cards. 3 copies of Hazzard, the Dark Forest Augur. This is just a fun card, a 2-drop Augur Resonator. 0 attack, 200 defense. This card cannot be targeted by spells or abilities. Now that's on both sides. You can't target it either, neither can your opponent. At the beginning of your main phase, this card deals 200 damage to target player or resonators. So just a fun little way to ping your opponent every time your main phase begins for 200. If you happen to get 2 on the field, you're going to ping your opponent for 400 every time your main phase begins. So I like fun cards. That's just like a little fun card to throw in there. 3 copies of Spiral of Despair, a 2-drop chant. You could only do this on your turn. Your opponent discards 2 cards. But if your ruler is Pandora, Girl of the Box, which we use, your opponent, he or she discards 2 cards at random instead. So normally they just discard 2. Discard is death, like I always say. But since we run Pandora, it's going to be 2 at random. So they lay them out and you pick or roll dice or whatever it is. But losing 2 cards at random, that's even worse than losing 2 cards. You can't even pick them. 4 copies of the Dark Purge. Great card. One of the best dark cards out there. Spell Chant Instant. Could do it at any time. 1 dark and 1 other to play. And target J Resonator gains -6/-6 until end of turn. So could target the J ruler. That is always good. This will kill 0 if we have 2 of them. If we can hit her with the double Dark Purge, 0 is 11/11. We can hit this as long as she doesn't have the bird out there for barrier. We can hit her twice and take her out. This will also kill many other J rulers too with the double Dark Purge. Good card to have in the sideboard just in case. Speaking of killing J rulers, a last bit of insurance, 2 copies of Black Moonbeam. You really don't need any more as long as you keep Nostradamus in the deck. If our opponent is getting silly with the J ruler, we can play our Nostradamus, put the Black Moonbeam on top, and know that the next turn we can draw to it and kill the J ruler. Also, if you know you're going to do that, it'd be nice to keep 2 stones open so you could draw it and then play it before you recover. So guys, that is it. The deck profile for No Hands Land. It's Pandora, Girl of the Box. Patrick, if you watched the video all the way through, I hope I served you well here. Hope you like it. But everyone else too, I hope you like it. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. There are always more videos coming soon, and hopefully getting with Mike Harley soon to record more matches. So, guys, as usual, thanks for a few minutes. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.